I think it's appropriate for me to first say, Ye mere liye, bahut suman, or kushi ki baat hai, Southampton mein ab subka swagat hai. Thank you for joining us, Sharadji. It's our great honour to be able to welcome you to the University of Southampton in virtual form. I'd like to also welcome all of our audience who are joining us from around the world, who are interested in learning about your story, learning about your achievements, and learning about what your vision is for the future in this space, social entrepreneurship and leadership. We're going to obviously have opportunities for our audience to interact with you through questions, but for the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to be on a metaphorical couch talking about your journey till now. So I'd like to start with a rather, I suppose, interesting question about whether or not you could quite acutely explain to the audience about Dexterity Global, and in a nutshell, explain what is the work that you do.
Thank you so much, first of all, for having me, and to everybody who's tuned in from different countries and continents across the world. Thank you for joining. It's a joy and a delight to be here joining University of Southampton faculty, students, the Indian High Commission, and everybody, people from all people who have joined. I think I'm getting slight echo on that, but yes. So yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about dexterity in a nutshell. Hopefully we'll dive more into it as the conversation progresses. If I could talk about dexterity, there are two things that we're talking about. The first one is that if there are opportunities for our young people, they should be the first ones to know about those opportunities. These can be scholarships, competitions, conferences, workshops, anything that allows them, to build themselves, build a career, move forward in life. So if there's an opportunity for young people, they should be the first ones to know about it. That is the first part. And the second part is, at Dexterity, we believe in building local role models, people who are able to bridge the gap between their classroom education and global leadership and act as servant leaders in the society. So the two core things that can put Dexterity in a nutshell. The first one is connecting young people with opportunities, and the second one is building local role models by enabling them to bridge the gap between their education and leadership. So that is basically what Dexterity does, and hopefully we can dive more into it as the conversation progresses.
Absolutely wonderful. So as the introductory slides have shown, your remarkable success as an entrepreneur has allowed you to receive many accolades. And I want to sort of deep dive into those as we go through the talk as well. But I've really got two questions, and I'm going to pose them one after the other here. What is social entrepreneurship to you personally, and how important do you think the role of the social entrepreneur is now and is going to become in the future in this contemporary world that we're now facing?
Oh, I think it's wonderful that you asked that question. Many social entrepreneurs around the world may not agree with me on this, and some might not even like it. But I have seen social entrepreneurship very differently. And the thing is that as most people who are joined in right now, they know that I started at the age of 16, and at that point in time, I myself didn't know that what I was doing was something, even entrepreneurship, leave aside social entrepreneurship. I was just trying to solve a problem. But how I have come to see social entrepreneurship is this. I think entrepreneurship in general is about identifying a need or solving a problem and creating value in the process, even if we go on the most textbook definition of it. And there is something all across the world today when we talk about, even someone as Bill Gates. People love Bill Gates 2.0, the leader of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, because they think that is something, more on the social entrepreneurship side. And they do not necessarily see Microsoft as something that changed the world. That is something even within Dexterity, when we are, building next generation leaders, we always ask our young people to be mindful of that. As long as you're creating value, as long as you're trying to lift more people up, solve a problem, or adequately address a need, what you're doing is extremely important. The reason why I'm talking about social entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship a little bit here is because I get to speak all across the country and sometimes the world, and many people ask me that many people have this view of social entrepreneurship where, it has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do maybe with a supply chain or a business model. Most of those things are untrue. There is a difference between, a small activity based charity, like like charitable work that you're doing at an activity level, and there's a difference between an enterprise that is trying to solve a problem. And that is the reason why I do not necessarily see too much of a difference between entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship. The reason why I was quoting Bill Gates 1.0 and 2.0 is, if you look at Bill Gates 1.0, he expanded the global economy by hundreds of trillions of dollars by increasing human productivity like never before. You look at Microsoft Excel, Word, PowerPoint; these also changed the world. Now, the reason why I'm talking about that is there comes a point in time when I think Bill Gates' comments on Steve Jobs saying that the world is richer today because Steve didn't choose to be the richest man at his burial. And that is something that is noteworthy to keep in mind. We do not become, even those who are for-profit entrepreneurs, they do not become billionaires just by chasing money or trying to be rich, powerful, or influential. You need to solve a problem. And it turns out, if you solve the problem for a large number of people, if you are able to do it at scale, you are going to be, rich, powerful, influential, whatever, comes with that kind of a success. Now, when we look at social entrepreneurship, just like there are problems, or needs that can be addressed in the field of technology, in the field of, in different fields across the world, just like that, there are a lot of problems that are yet to be solved in the field of education, healthcare, agriculture, microfinance, banking the unbanked, reaching those communities that are yet to receive enough access, largely disadvantaged or underserved people. And you can do that in as systematic a manner, even at that level. That is the reason why, social is in the mind. I think if you are largely socially conscious, if your goal is, if you're willing, and I think that is something every entrepreneur needs to do. That is the reason why it would, partly answer the second part of your question, the need for social entrepreneurship in our times. The need in our times is of entrepreneurship. And the kind of entrepreneurs who we need are people who are always reminded of the purpose. If the purpose is placed above profit, you would have tremendous impact. There is one way of, saving trees. That is, you go and you hug trees and you say, please don't cut trees. The other side is, everywhere where we are, cutting trees at a number that is, unimaginable, can we replace that with something? A Kindle device, an online tablet, a lot of other things. They helped us save trees at a same level. Of course, the environmental factors of e-waste and everything, we can get into all of that later. But what I'm trying to say is that the world needs entrepreneurs who are willing to put purpose above profits. But what they're doing, that should be hopefully scalable, hopefully sustainable, hopefully systems driven. And as long as we do that, there are large enough problems in the world to be solved, and 21st century needs more and more people to democratize the access to education, democratize different industries, different domains and sectors. So that's the reason why I have never necessarily seen social entrepreneurship as very different from entrepreneurship. It probably deploys almost all that you would need as an entrepreneur. It's just that I think the mind and thought of a social entrepreneur needs to have full clarity as in what is the larger goal that we are trying to achieve. But if you ask someone like me, that is the same thing that a for-profit entrepreneur needs as well.
By the way, how you bring in the idea of purpose ahead of profit, though, first. So a little bit of a question for you here. You mentioned Bill Gates in your answer. Who is the entrepreneur that inspires you the most right now that we would never have heard of?
An entrepreneur who inspires me, who no one has heard of. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, who's inspiring you at the moment as an entrepreneur?
See, to be very honest, I see all of these things under the larger theme of leadership. Somebody who has a company listed on a stock exchange, somebody who does not have a company listed on the stock exchange but has a company incorporated, And somebody who has neither of the two, but has an enterprising mind, is putting that into action as an intrapreneur, as an entrepreneur, as a manager within a company, or as just as an independent individual. I think they're all inspiring. Leadership for me is inspiring, and for that, it mostly comes from people who we do not read about in newspapers or watch on television. These are all people who are able to, lead, innovate, people who are enterprising. And in general, if I was to, name an entrepreneur, I think that would be kind of challenging. When I was in high school, I think I was reading a series that was, a series of books that were like, they were seeing a lot of leaders and their style as that of a CEO. So that series included, Gandhi, the CEO, Mandela, the CEO. And I think that's just very exciting. So, but in general, I do not think I can name one entrepreneur as such. I think it is it is a mentality that is to solve problems, build things, and wherever you see that, whether it is the back bench of a classroom or the front the bench of a lab, it is just exciting to see it and witness it.
Brilliant. So you mentioned a little bit about your childhood there, and that leads me into the next question. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe had said that the greatest thing in this world is not so much where we stand, but in what direction we are moving. And I think that, like many great entrepreneurs and leaders, it's inspiring to learn a little bit about background, the story that leads someone to the position they're in now. We know that you were born in Bihar, and I want to ask a little bit more about your childhood and what put you on this journey that you're now on.
Yeah, I think I have repeated this story almost every time I have been at a platform, because I either get asked this question or this question is pretty central to what I do today. And that's the reason why, it comes up again and again. So yes, I was born in Bihar in a place called Ziradeh. That's the place where the first president of India, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, was born. But several decades after independence, this place was yet to get good schools or libraries. And my father worked for the State Bank of India, and he had a transferable job as in a job where he had a lot of, different postings. He would get transferred every now and then. And most places where he worked were rural areas in Bihar. There were no good schools around, and parents decided to teach us at home. So the first 12 years of my life, I didn't see the face of a school. I didn't know what formal education was like. We studied at home, and like other kids in school, they call it homework and classwork. We used to call it Papa's work and Mummy's work. So PW and MW was what we used to mark it as. And while studying at home, there were three ways in which I was educated. The first one was, the sayings and the teachings of great men and women, those who came before us. The second one was reading newspapers every day, and newspapers used to come one day late in these places. These places were this distant and remote. And the third part was, of course, textbooks and notebooks would be brought home, and we would self-teach ourselves, or our parents would teach us. Now, that is what I basically, how I was educated for the first 12 years of my life. And then there comes a point in time, when I'm 6, 7, or 8 years old, and I'm reading newspapers, and I would read about some kid from a major city of India who would receive a full scholarship to study somewhere, somebody who would win a major competition, or somebody who would represent India at an international platform. And I used to wonder, if I could do that. And talent and ability wise, I can't comment, but qualification wise, I could not have, because I was not enrolled in a school. So I just picked up a very simple habit, and that was I would write down the name of the competition, the month in which the news article came out, and who can participate in that. And I used to do that every time there was an article about any young achiever that was there in the newspaper. Fast forward that story, age of 12, we moved to the capital city of Bihar, the city of Patna, with my mother, and we get enrolled in a school here, my two siblings and I. And I started participating in all these competitions, fast forward that story. And by the time I was graduating high school, I had won close to 200 different local, national, and international competitions, represented India in over 6 different countries. And as you would imagine, this was something that was being celebrated in the local media or in my school. There was this possibility was there that I could have either thought that, okay, I'm very smart and hardworking, that's why I'm doing these things, or I could have paused and thought why this is happening. And the fun fact is, standard 9, standard 10, grade 9 or 10, I would come back from a Japan or South Korea, and I would tell my friends about, the flight that we took, the hotels that we stayed at, of course, with childlike excitement. But I would also tell them the questions that were asked at these global competitions, or the ideas that were put forward at these global forums. And many times I saw that my friends who came from smaller towns and districts of my own state, who sat right next to me in the classroom, they many times knew an answer that everybody missed at a global platform. Many times they had ideas that were brighter than any idea put forward at a global platform. And I used to tell them, oh, you should have been there. You should have participated. And I was fortunate enough to realize at a young age that I was at these platforms and my friends were not, because of that simple habit that I had written down that these are about each one of these opportunities that I had found out from newspapers. I knew that these opportunities existed, my friends did not. And that's why in 2008, while still in high school, grade 9, grade 10, around that point in time, I founded Dexterity Global, and it would only be, in 2012 that I would go to college. But I was running for Dexterity for 4 solid years as a high school student, and the idea was simple: that if there's an opportunity, anybody who is of that age bracket should get to know about it, because many people miss out on these national, local, and global opportunities because they do not know that these exist. And the second part was that I had seen at these global platforms that many times young people who came to these at these global platforms, they came from international school and world schools, usually schools where the school fee is almost 2 times or 3 times the salary of an average middle income family, sometimes anywhere in the world for that matter. And I used to wonder, if we were talking about access to clean drinking water, if a girl child from somewhere in Rajasthan, in India, who had seen her mother go 1.5 kilometers to fetch water, if she spoke at the same platform, her own lived experiences, her own thoughts would probably not just add value, but they would also inspire and inspire new thoughts and inspire other young people, because lived experiences count. Creative solutions come when you have many times seen those things, when you've lived those things. So I used to, this other thought.
I think we might have just lost Sharad for a brief second. He did warn me that Zoom occasionally logs him out, and that he'll be logging back in very quickly. So please do bear with us just for a couple of seconds, and Sharad will join us again. Hopefully he doesn't forget where he was in the story, because he was really mid-flow there. Fascinating. I think it's really interesting to hear about how Sharad didn't even see a school until he was 12 years old, but seeing this trajectory that he's on, what he's been able to achieve by even starting the company, the organization, I'm sorry, by the age of 16 years old is quite phenomenal. But it's also testimony to the fact that he's able to take ideas from what he was observing in his own environment and turn it into something that's quite incredible, and is obviously of great utility to young people that is frankly the generation he's from. I think that's something that needs to be commented on, and it's really laudable. Sabu, thanks for joining me back.
I just thought to really give you a little...
Yeah, thanks.
All right, I'm back.
Jared, you're back. Yes.
Yes. I'm so sorry for, my Zoom has been acting funny today. It logs out every 20, 30 minutes. But yeah, so with your permission, can I quickly conclude that part?
Please do,
yes.
Please do.
Yeah, so that was the second part, that I felt we had gone too deep into the habit of parachuting leadership. Somebody who studied in Manchester would probably come and solve the problem of Mumbai. Somebody who has studied in Mumbai would probably go to Muzaffarpur and solve the problem. We need to build leadership bottom up. We need to build leaders in communities that need them. And that is basically what we need everywhere. I can be talking about India, I can be talking about England, Africa, Latin America, wherever it is. We should not get too complacent with the habit of, parachuting leadership. We need to build leadership bottom up. And that is why, 2008, Dexterity's idea comes to my mind. We get started, and then 4 years later, I go to Tufts University to pursue my bachelor's degree. I still continue it. So the joke at Dexterity is, for the first 4 years, I was a high school student and a CEO. Next 4 years, I was a college student and a CEO. These past 5 years, I've been a full-time CEO.
Quite phenomenal. And I was saying whilst you were away there, that it's incredible to take an observation from your own lived experiences and turn it into something that's so has so much utility for young people.
If you look at it, that is probably also what I have done. My own lived experiences transformed into the idea of Dexterity. Likewise, those young people with their lived experiences can probably add a lot of value.
Absolutely. And I'm wondering, obviously, you just mentioned how you had 4 years whilst you were a high school student, and then whilst you were at Tufts, and now you've had another 5 years running the business. That's a long time, or the organization, sorry. That's a long time. What's been the most significant road bump that you've experienced it, and how have you surmounted that?
Oh, I think first things first, the road bump was that I was, I think it's the same at many places. But if you are a school student, speaking to your own school principal is a challenge sometimes. I had to go around the city and speak to school principals of other students. And I was, 15, 16. So nobody wants to, hear a 15, 16-year-old lecture or propose how the education needs to run and how opportunities need to come in and servant leadership and all these things. So I think that was the first one, but many times I would be asked. So the first 4 years, it took a lot of time, to see that phase when people began believing that this is even important. Leave aside whether or not it has an impact. I think it took a solid 4 years for people to begin to, realize that this was something that was important for children of all backgrounds, like across all socioeconomic background. This was important, and then so that was, the challenge in the first 4 years, being that young and trying to, convince educators, school leaders that this was something important. And that is when Dexterity brings, the direct to student model as opposed to direct to school model, because we had to go through the school each time. And school, if a school said no, then 1,200 students or 2,000 students within a school would probably never have access to something like Dex Connect. So we built a direct to student model then. The second thing, of course, was when I was in college with a 10.5-hour time difference, continuing to run the organization. And I ran on, 4 hours of sleep almost every day, 4 years of college. That is part of the reason why I turned down a master's degree offer from Harvard and returned in 2016, because I could not have done that, for 2 more years or 1 more year. So those sort of things were there, but, it's part of the journey. We have never seen it, as one standout challenge or the other. But definitely, I think education is something where a lot of things happen very slowly. It's not that, you're distributing books. It's not that you're distributing food packets, that you can count it and the impact can be seen. In education, like Dexterity's impact, I think we still believe you'll see this impact between 2025 and 2035, when these young people are in actual decision-making positions, when their organizations actually begin to have deep impact. It's just that today, their scholarship numbers and different initiatives and projects young people have started, or just the staggering number of young people we reach within classrooms with opportunity updates. These are, of course, things that people like to celebrate today. But I think in education, impact takes quite some time, and sometimes as long as 10, 15 years. So Dexterity is entering that phase now, when you'll see the first 15 years of this work. So yeah, we have been peacefully passionate. That's what we like to call ourselves.
Wonderful. Now, you've used the term servant leadership several times already. And I think those are an interesting concoction of words, to serve and to lead at the same time. For you, how do you manage to install, or do you think you can install and instill these qualities in young people? and how do you approach that challenge in practice?
Yes, it is something that I get asked often by people who take deep interest in the organization. They say that the ideas are good and great. What is remarkable is how at all they work, or how have they been put into practice. Like, it is very easy probably to talk about servant leadership, very difficult to actually build people, shape people, groom people who practice that. I think there are a couple of things we are very clear about. The dexterity thought is all about this, that we talk about an education rooted in purpose and leadership rooted in service. Many times, I think all across the world, we are failing our children if we send them to school and never ask them or never tell them, why do we send you to school? If we send an entire generation, put an entire generation through college, never with the thought never crossing their mind, why do we go to college at all? And I think this is something that dexterity in a very meaningful way, right from the beginning, engages our young people with, enabling them to really ask, why do we go to school and why do we go to college? And when young people begin to, ask this question, they like to find answers that are, beyond that 9 to 5 job or just to secure a paycheck. That is when they begin to wonder, who were the people in this world who went to school before us? Who were the people in the world who went to college before us? And how did they begin putting that education to use? And this is something that Dexterity has continued to talk about. You are in the United Kingdom right now, who the gentleman who we revere as the father of the nation here in India was studying at a place called University College in London when he was a teenager. What we have done very conveniently in the world is we have talked about great leaders, we have talked about great lives, and we have not told our teenagers in their early teens and 20s what were great men and women doing when they were in their early teens and 20s. And if you look at it, education has had a transformative impact on these people, but that education was holistic in purpose. When you look at it, it had service and we call it Seva and Samvad here. Seva is service, and Samvad is establishing dialogue, communicating with people around you, ranging from cab drivers to newspaper hawkers to janitors, people who who come in your way, people who greet you, people who you forget to greet so often. Those conversations continue to educate you in a very important manner. More and more, the more we move towards just bookish knowledge, the more we land the threat of building men and women, but not with capital M or capital W. We talk about it, man with a capital M. That can only be built when they have been introduced to a life of purpose. And education is given to them as that tool that will enable them to live that purpose. And that purpose can also be, solving a large enough problem and making a lot of money, doing a lot of fun things and making a lot of money. Money is, remember, throughout when I'm talking about it, it's not, I'm not suggesting that purpose means not making money. Purpose can be solving a problem for billions of people and becoming the first trillionaire in the world. There's no problem in that, because if you're solving a large enough problem, you'll make a large sum of money, hopefully. So that's there. But overall, how we go about it, we enable young people to see their education as and connect it with the world outside, something that bothers them, something that they want to do with their education, something that they want to change or challenge. And that is the reason why I think our kids are drawn to the ideas of leadership. Leadership at Dexterity is pretty simple. We talk about it as your ability to deliver value through whatever limited expertise you have. Your ability to deliver value can be writing a letter for someone, teaching somebody, 2 math sums, and your limited expertise, that is basically where education comes in. When you are in grade 6, that is your limited expertise. When you have a doctorate, that is your limited expertise. And that's the reason why education or learning is a lifelong process. And we encourage our young people to remain lifelong learners and lifelong leaders and continue to bridge the gap between learning and leading. Whatever you learn, translate that into action. And wherever you need to lead, increase that limited expertise that you have. So that is largely, an inner conversation that our young people begin to have with themselves. And thankfully, in early days, maybe some of them saw me as a small but important, close to home example. And now today they see our alumni as important examples of, servant leaders putting their education to use. So that has become, a very important factor as well in instilling that quality.
We're obviously seeing a similar kind of trend where young people are looking to create jobs, make jobs for people, rather than just simply take jobs and see through a career path and have a pension at the end. There's definitely a growing thirst for engaging and having that entrepreneurial spirit. Now, I always find that when I have an opportunity to speak to super ambitious people like yourself, there's always the next thing in mind. There's always something else in the crosshairs that they're wanting to achieve. If we fast forward 5, maybe 10 years, what does the future have in store for Sharad Ji?
I accept the word super ambitious, but I would like to make a slight change in that. I don't see myself as somebody who's super ambitious. I see myself as somebody who's super engaged. And so 5, 10 years later, I think I'll remain super engaged. I'll remain super engaged in education, in leadership, and in nation building. And just like life has taken a young boy from small towns and districts of Bihar to, a place like Southampton, even if virtually, life will take me, to places where I need to be. Hopefully, if I continue to stay, super engaged, super involved in building the next generation of servant leaders for India and the world. And, if I'm continuously thinking and adding value to education in general, leadership in specific, and nation building as the larger goal. So if there was a specific thing I couldn't tell you, but yeah, that small tweak in the compliment can probably answer that question. Instead of being super ambitious, staying super engaged.
So beautifully put. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Obviously, we've got many young people, students from our university and elsewhere that are joining us on the call today. What advice can you give them about perhaps taking that first leap into entrepreneurship with a social flavor?
I think this is what I want to say to all young people who have joined. And by young, we at Dexterity mean anybody who's willing to learn, anybody who's willing to change and embrace change. So this includes anybody from 0 to 99 or further. But this is basically what I have to say to all of our young people, that the night before Neil Armstrong landed on moon, man had not landed on moon. The night before, the world wars were over, or telephone was invented, or internet was a thing, till the night before, these were all things that were a part of utopia. We could have easily written these things off till they happened. And that is the reason why every single time you have a thought or an idea, a pathway that you want to walk or a pathway you want to pave, be mindful of the fact that till the night, many great things have happened, no matter how big or small. They were all a distant dream, easily discardable. And that is the reason why it is very important that if you feel that in the United Kingdom or in India or in the United States or anywhere in the world, more children can be put through school, yes, they can. If you feel that agriculture or healthcare or just in general, financial literacy, all these things can change. If you believe in that, then I think this one powerful example should always be in your mind, that all great things till they were done, till the night before, they were all, discarded as utopia or this was whimsical thinking. So that is something that I'll tell you. So your education matters, you matter. And if you get involved somewhere with your education, with your experiences, with your passion, everything will matter, and it will matter in a very positive way. So that is what I have to say to you, and also wish and pray for.
A lovely sentiment, Sharad. One final question before we turn to the questions that the audience is creating. And it's a little bit of a personal question, and it's one that I can see from you, a very humble person, very grounded. until now, you have had a number of accolades and invitations that are high profile in nature, from being invited to the White House, from being listed in the Forbes 30 under 30 list. You obviously were invited to the Queen, to meet the Queen, etc. Of all of the accolades, of all of the experiences that you have had so far, which are you most proud of? Which has had the greatest impact on you and your individual mission?
I think that's a great question, and I've never thought of it. I have been asked this question the other way around. When I was at Tufts, I used to be the team manager of the varsity ice hockey team, and the goalkeeper, who was the All-American goalkeeper there, the goaltender, he asked me one time, he was like, Sharad, what did you do after you got on the Forbes under 30 list? And I couldn't think of anything. I said, I got back to work. So, and then he and I, concluded that I have never ever celebrated an achievement. And that is true, that remains true. I have never thought of any one of those moments as an achievement. But right now, when I think of it, I think even till this date, something that pumps me up a lot for all reasons is that, at Dexterity, we talk about local role models, that some role models can be very far off, and somebody who you see in your immediate surrounding, in your immediate community, that person's impact on you is usually very, very high. And that is something. So for me, my local role model was my brother. And he was first from my home state to go to MIT on a full scholarship. He passed away in 2017. When I had returned from a village of Bihar. I was speaking there, and he had seen a picture of me speaking with a kid who would be probably 8 or 9 years old. That kid was sitting on a cot. There was a wall right behind him that wasn't that well polished. The kid had his first button closed, and I was speaking with that kid, 8, 9 years old. And my brother had seen that picture, and he would not emote too much. He was, deeply involved in science and research. But he, when I returned from there, he told me that I saw that picture, and I felt very proud of you. Remember, we came from a similar background. I could see myself in that kid. And then he said, you never know which dishwasher at Humphrey Davy's lab would go on to be the next Michael Faraday. And you're probably doing that. You're unlocking those Michael Faradays. I think that bumps me up a hell lot. And it does till this date. And I repeat that to my teammates again and again. And that in a nutshell, reminds me of who I am, what I do, and why I do what I do. So yeah, I think that getting that compliment from somebody who would not usually comment or speak that much, I think that remains an achievement very close to my heart. I consider it an achievement.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you for giving such an honest reflection to that question. I think this is a really great time to now turn to the questions that our audience will have. And Sabuji, I believe that we're going to first invite Dr. Asif.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So, but Sharadji, what an inspiring. I mean, this is really, I think it's all about, along with our growth, if we are able to inspire, as many as we can, I think then life has a value, right? So I think just before I hand over to Professor Asif, who is actually a British inventor, and he's been one of the pioneering medical scientists, I think clinical scientists who had really developed a solution for overcoming challenges in pregnancy and so on. But before that, I think I would like to really add just a quick reflection, Sharadji, is that on a personal note, I have 3 people in my life, I think, that whom I have always looked at. One is, of course, Mahatma Gandhi, I think, for his values and his readings are so deep and so on. Second is Swami Vivekananda. Actually, in fact, I always sometimes think that, both are influenced by each other. The third one is our former president, APJ Abdul Kalam. Now I think I've discovered the fourth one. That's you. I think, you can inspire. You can inspire the next generation. I think India has a huge opportunity because India is a country that has been tolerant, that has been really forthcoming in many aspects. I think we need leaders like yourself I think so. That's just a. It's not. Please do not think that it is just a compliment, but it is actually something that we genuinely feel that, well, you are able to do that. And whatever support you need, I think from an academic perspective or a research perspective, I think we are here for you. Over to Professor Asif.
Thank you very much.
Professor Asif, I mean, if you could just introduce yourself and ask your question, because there is some connection between Professor Asif and you, Sharadji.
Sharad, namaste, adab. Yeah, I think we're from the same area, right? From Bihar, and I'm from Patna, just so you know. In fact, my great-great-grandfather was the one who established the state of Bihar. So Sir Ali Imam, you might know, I've heard of him. Anyway, I was really intrigued by what you said, and especially in relation to social entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Bill Gates wouldn't have been able to do what he's doing if he hadn't built Microsoft. So it's about value proposition, and you, like you, I also strongly believe that if you solve a big problem, money will follow automatically, right? And then money is an enabler. But how do you then, when you're starting a startup, like Mirzam, you can see behind me, which is, while I talk to you every minute, I talk with you, a life is lost due to preeclampsia. And we believe we can solve that within this decade globally. And obviously it's market segmentation and pricing and stuff. But how do you get the VCs? You get your seed money and things, but how do you get the VCs who just see spreadsheets to believe in that value proposition and know that, so that's what I was wondering, whether your thoughts on that. And the second thing I wanted to say, I totally agree with you that education takes time, and Rome wasn't built in a day, and to see that impact takes a long time. I'm one of the people who founded a medical school on social inclusivity. And that impact is already, I can see, but there's still medical students. Anyway, so wanted your thoughts on that.
Thank you very much for your question. I think education takes a lot of time, medical education a lot more. So to quickly comment on the VC side, from a personal standpoint, I run a non-profit social enterprise. So of course, I do not have to deal with VCs, but we have an interesting story. In the last 13 years, we have not raised a single penny in donations. We run directly on Dexterity revenues. And this is something that is interesting for everybody who's listening, that at Dexterity, connecting young people with opportunities or training them to grow as future leaders, or the college access program, everything that we run, it makes perfect sense for somebody who's the, a daughter of a landless farmer and the son of, an important bureaucrat. And this is basically what happens. Once kids are into the program, they self-declare whether or not they need financial aid. And no one, including me, gets to know who's on financial aid and who's not. If at all, it is the young people who take pride in that. And that's the revenue model through which Dexterity runs. Close to 85% of our children are on financial aid, and the 15%, they pay for the program. In fact, it is not seen, we do not see it as a cross subsidy model, because if it was to be 95 and 5, we would still do it. There is no quota system as such. So that is how Dexterity runs. I have, of course, some experience with VCs and angels in general, because when I was in college, I was the youngest winner of the $100,000 entrepreneurship challenge. And I got to spend some time with people at Andreessen Horowitz, the venture capital firm that did, Facebook and Zynga and others, Kleiner Perkins, the guys who did Google and Amazon, Norwest, which did Yatra.com and others. So I've spent some time with VCs ever since I was, a freshman in college. One of the things that I still believe, that is, if the purpose is clear, and if we are able to put that out there, of course, that works. I know with just pitching in general, it is not about VCs, I guess. It is about pitching in general, that it is about those 100 no's and that one yes. And in the process, one begins to be skeptic of whether or not VCs even understand the ideas. But I think it just depends on the phase and stage the company is in, and the phase and stage the VCs are in, and also, the right fit at the right time and everything else. It's a long process, and I know that you know this better than me. But overall, I think even when it comes to VCs, I think the team gets the investment. This is something that it remains, whether it is a traditional business school exploring this, or a bunch of entrepreneurs who don't believe in any books or textbooks or rules. It is the team that usually draws the investment as much as the idea does. And in the team, I think that the vision part, the purpose part, the clarity of what they're doing and how they're doing it, that is very important. I know that in healthcare, in general, there, of course, you have a solution that you actually built that you can actually test under contained circumstances, whether or not it works. But in general, I think for VCs, it's just that it becomes a frequency game, a numbers game, where you are hitting, and then one time it will be a perfect hit. So, of course, I do not have a side comment on it, but clarity of vision, clarity of thought, and that running across each team member, of course, plays an important role in my limited, experience and opinion.
Thank you.
And I think, I'll quickly add, and I think there are a lot of people now who are emerging, even in the venture capital sector, who are, more targeted in terms of being socially conscious. A lot of, social capital, a lot of, people are coming who are in they are usually called the third sector capital and stuff. So a lot of people are coming up in that way. And then there are a lot of people who are focusing especially on businesses that are run by women, businesses run by people of color, businesses that are socially conscious. So that area is also opening up at the same time. Hopefully they won't be looking too much at the spreadsheet, and which of course they have to at the end of the day, but also they would see at, the larger purpose, vision, and the team that is running it.
Thank you very much. It's as Lewis Carroll said, well, now that we've seen each other, said the unicorn, if you believe in me, I'll believe in you.
Thank you, Professor. I think, Rob, I think you can.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Asif. That was excellent question. I'm hoping, Sharad, you're still with us. Good. So there's a great question by Raul here. He said, what is Mr. Sharad's thought and pathway about commercializing education? Looks like we've lost Sharad temporarily again. Hopefully he'll be back quite quickly as before.
Well, Rob, I just thought while we're waiting for Sharad to come back, I think it would be also useful to find out, oh, he's back, I think. Useful to find out how we put the mindset of our young students to think about entrepreneurship, not just about social, but what about Bill Gates type or Steve Jobs type, because they've made a difference to the world.
Sure. Well, why don't we take that question? I think that's a great question. Why don't we take that one first? And Raul, if you just bear with us. Sharadji, did you hear the question?
So if you could, if you could please repeat it.
Absolutely, yeah. So
Thank you.
Professor Asif's question was, how do we install the mindset of entrepreneurship in younger people to become the next Bill Gates, to become the next Steve Jobs, for instance?
Yeah, there are two parts to my answer. The first one, of course, is, helping our young people think as problem solvers, introducing them or just enabling them to be more mindful of, the society that they live in, the news that they consume, the different things that, they come across day by day, and seeing how they can apply themselves or their education in the process. The second part of it is also very interesting, and that is something that Dexterity does month after month through Dex Connect. That is a larger goal. you see many times parents and teachers, they complain that, oh, our children do not have any interest, they're wasting all their time playing video games, or they're not being, as productive. The problem is how many different opportunities, avenues, or fields or areas of interest have we exposed them to. And for that reason, Dex Connect, this entire opportunity update that we send out on the 10th of every month to kids, and it reaches them directly in their schools and classrooms and also on their phones. That it gives them the opportunity, to participate in a coding competition or a science-based competition or art, design, writing, different fields. And that allows young people to, engage in different fields, explore those fields, learn more, and basically engage their mental faculties across different multidisciplinary opportunities that keep coming up. I think doing that from a very young age has an impact on how young people continue to perceive things. Will they be more straitjacketed? Will they be more streamlined in terms of their thought? Or will they be willing to, look at the interdisciplinarity of things, look at multidisciplinary things, bring it together, see that in a more creative manner, engage in things that are more, innovative or problem solving, that sort of in nature. But that is the reason why the first part I was thinking, the first part I was mentioning was, enabling young people to think, engage, relate with their immediate surroundings, their education. And the second part is giving them these opportunities right from a very young age to participate in competitions, even designing those competitions. The university in general, I think, can design competitions for high school students. Just like a tour to the university facilities, which I think the University of Southampton must be doing already, when high school kids get to come into the campus and walk around, see the research facilities and other things. As much as that gives them exposure and stokes their interest, the same way organizing a small competition, a small workshop, or giving every child that opportunity to see the world through his or her own eyes, but engage with something that they have never before, that just begins to unfold that problem solver within, unfold that leader within, that person who's willing to take an initiative. And it is only a person who's willing to take an initiative who can go on to take a risk. And if entrepreneurs have to manage that risk, that needs to start at a much younger age. That mindset needs to be built.
I must say, when it gets to 18 to 18 plus education at the university, there's something we certainly believe in as part of our philosophy of education, is giving students the opportunity to engage in competitions as much as we possibly can to embed that entrepreneurial spirit. So that's something that we definitely take really seriously here. So I couldn't agree more with you on that vision. So back to Raul's question. He says, what's your thought and indeed pathway about decommercializing education, if you have one?
See, we live in a world where education is needed and commerce is a part. So the question, if we use the word commercialization of education, and then that is probably bad. There will be some money involved with education, whether that comes from the government, whether that comes from the students, like or the families, or it comes from donors on the side or people who are willing to fund the process. Now the thing is that as much as I believe in I would not make a blatant comment about, oh, education should not be commercial. I would not attack commercialization or decommercialization of it. The only point I would like to make is that every child should have an equal opportunity to learn and build a pathway for himself or herself. And the society needs to be, an active part of this journey for all of our young people. Now, there are two ways to go about it. If the commercialization of education is from, a startup standpoint, if you're looking at an ed tech company that can come in and all those things, of course, that is the reason why I did not deride the word right away. The whole world, it is, chain of value that we are delivering. And like with energy, they talk about, energy transferring from one state to the other, just like that. We walk into a cinema hall, a multiplex to watch a movie, we get entertainment value, we pay financial value for it. We go to a university, we get knowledge value, we pay financial value for it. So it is value that is, continuing to move from one form to the other. And that I think needs to, that will exist. But education should be an industry of hope. It should not be an industry of fear. which is unfortunately happening even in places around the world where many people cannot afford to pay those pay the kind of fee and everything, and yet they have this fear that if my child does not go to college, my child is going to lag behind. And that is something that is increasingly becoming a problem, that education is becoming an industry of fear, that, oh, if my child does not go to this kind of a high school, if my child does not go to this kind of a college, then my child is going to lag behind. And if that is, seeing a spike in the fee attached to that education, then that is a problem. But at the same time, I feel that if there is a problem in any field, that is an opportunity for many, many people to come in. And that is where, the next generation of entrepreneurs and leaders can come in and add value, whether that means, flipping a classroom for our kids, reaching better after class material and other things through technology, whatever it may be. But overall, if I was to, sum up, I went in different directions to answer this, but I would say that there will definitely be a degree of commerce involved in education, but I don't think that we should just make education a price tag sort of a thing, where more and more people are not able to access it. And even if there are real costs involved in, which I think universities incur to a very, very large degree, then we need the society to participate in it, whether it is corporates, whether it is high net worth individuals, foundations. We need to the entire public participation in order to make sure that every child has a decent opportunity at building a career for himself or herself.
Fantastic. Thank you. There's a really nice question. You've inspired so many of us in the audience, and here's evidence of this from Sagnika, who says, I'm from a remote village of West Bengal. I'm striving to provide quality education to my brothers and sisters in the village. How can Dexterity Global help me in this respect?
Anyone. So Dexterity, of course, does not run schools. We run programs that any child who is within school or out of school can make use of. And these programs help them immensely in getting connected with opportunities and then growing as leaders and in college access. So, and among other things that they do. So you can log on to dexterityglobal.org and you can go to the programs page. And for the kids that you're asking this question, they can directly get Dex Connected. Dex Connect is free for everyone. On the 10th of every month, they will start receiving educational opportunities that might also receive scholarship opportunities, that might also include scholarship opportunities for them. And besides that, there are different platforms that they can take a look at, Dex School, Dexterity to College, and these can all be helpful. You don't need to worry about, either the price or the income status, because Dexterity has a need-blind financial aid policy that says pay only if you can. And we mean every word of it, and we've meant it every day last 13 years.
Wonderful. A great question by Nayan Patel G here, which is about the role of mentors. Do you have a mentor, and what role do you think mentors play in the success of entrepreneurs?
Yes, I think the mentoring plays an extremely important and crucial role, so much so that there are going to be so many mentors throughout your journey. You have to be on the you need to have an open mind. You need to be always willing to learn. And I think mentoring or learning in general is not so much about finding the right kind of mentors. It is also about being in the right frame of mind where you can take critical feedback, where you can take inputs, where you are willing to learn and listen and grow. So that is there. I think throughout my journey, I have received a lot of inputs from a lot of people. And at Dexterity, we pride ourselves on listening. We say that in the last 13 years, every platform that we went on to build ever since our founding, we were able to do that because we were always listening. We were listening to the students who were a part of a platform and they felt one other program needed to be built. We were listening to teachers. We were listening to parents. So that sort of inputs have continued to come in. Besides, of course, my teachers in high school, my professors in college, people who are, social leaders or social workers or entrepreneurs who have had success. They've all been very, very kind and continue to engage with us. Sometimes conversations help a lot. And that is basically, we have continued move forward.
Sharadji, sorry to interrupt. I think, what a flow of questions and answers. I think this is really enlightening and inspiring. We are conscious of your time. We don't want to really, but at the same time, we still have our colleagues, friends, I think, who are really keen to engage and ask questions. And these are the right, I think this is probably the opportunity. When opportunity knocks at the door, you just seize it, So I don't know, well, if you're comfortable going on for a few more minutes, I think we would be more than happy and delighted to really continue the conversation.
Sure, not a problem.
Thank you. Rob.
Thank you very much. A nice question from Mr. Somnath Nandi in Delhi. He says, do you think that students should be taught how to handle a failure rather than success during their schooling in order to develop that entrepreneurial mindset? How do you feel about that?
See, I am a very bad candidate for a fireside chat sort of a thing, because my answers usually are not, one sentence answers, because a lot of these things I've spent quite some time thinking about, and it becomes tough to, put it out there. And many times it's not the conventional answer. Like I could have easily, said a few nice things about handling failure and how we need to teach our kids that. But I think the problem lies in the fact, in the way we glorify success and what we define as success. The major part of the problem. I was in a small village in Andhra Pradesh in India, and I was speaking with middle school and high school students, and one of them told me that I also want to be successful like you. How do I attain success? So I asked the kid, how do you define success? And how do you define failure? And I won't go too long into the story or too much into it. Simply putting it out there, I asked them, if you had to go from point A, that is your house, to point B, your grandmother's house, and if I tell you the distance is 250 miles or kilometers, like 250 miles is not equal to 250 kilometers. People from all across the world were listening. I just said, like, take a random number, and depends on the metric unit that you go by. But if you had to go, 250 miles from point A to point B, point A being your house, point B being your grandmother's house, you go 100 miles and you run it, your car has a flat tire. What do you do? Is that failure? So the kid said, no, it's a temporary, like it's a momentary upset. It's not, failure as much. So what do you do? So you get the tires fixed. You go another 100 miles and you lose the way. What do? Do you stop? Do you stay in the forest or somewhere where you're stranded and say that, oh, I'm never going to reach, my grandmother's house? Or what do you do? So you ask for people, and you are 15 miles away from your grandmother's house. You run out of fuel. Do you call that failure? No, it's it's a momentary setback. So what do? You get more gas, or you get your car refueled. But is getting your car refueled success? No, that is, a temporary boost. And finally, I said to my young friends that life, just like that car journey from point A to B, your mother's house to your grandmother's house, is like, that point from the point of birth to the point of death. The problem is that we do not know the 200 miles. If we know it will be 88 years and 123 days, it would be so much easier for us. It's the fear of the unknown that magazines, tabloids, and newspapers like to sell with adjectives and adverbs and nouns that they have coined, especially to just sell and glorify success. And so many of our young people fail to understand that success is usually what other people see and infer from your journey, from your actions, from your impact, from what you are able to do and undo, whatever it is. And it is only at the end of our journey that, the world outside would be able to comment on whether or not we lived a successful life. Professor Sabu named, two, three great people: President Kalam, Swami Vivekananda, Mahatma Gandhi. You and I call them successful. They could not have called themselves successful. That is the reason why there are no failures. They're all temporary setbacks, and there are no successes. They are temporary boosts. It is us who have to keep that momentum going. And at the end of the day, it will be the journey from point A to point B that would get it done. So if we want our kids to handle failure well enough, it is the price that we keep on success, how we price success, that we need to, start pausing on or start getting rid of a little bit. And it is, the process that we need to make sure that they fall in love with. It can be by rigor and discipline in the beginning, and just by choice eventually as they move on. So it is a process that we need to, as long as they ran that process right, they should be happy and proud of it. That is the reason why probably introducing sports in almost every school across the world, whether or not we can, afford it, that is important. Because in sports, you see, if you ran that process right, whether you got that wicket or not, whether you were able to score that goal or not, your coach would be happy because your team ran the systems. That is something that we need to teach our kids in high schools. Doing that character building exercises, doing that without, quality conversations, be tough. My comment.
Wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And Asif has added there, FAIL is an acronym, which is first attempt in learning, which I think is a nice way of conceptualizing it as well. I think we've got time for one more question. If you would humor us with that, please, Sharad Ji. And it comes from Professor Laura Costanzo. She says here, what are the challenges, in your opinion, of scaling up a social enterprise like Dexterity, if any, that you've experienced?
So social enterprises like Dexterity, that makes the question itself slightly challenging for me, because for us, a few things matter a lot more than what it would to some other social enterprises, both being honest, ethical, noble, everything in the process. For us, it is not just about scaling. It is about ensuring that as we scale, that impact remains. And some of our programs, like Dexterity School of Leadership and Entrepreneurship, still hasn't ever taken more than 60 kids into the program in a calendar year. People tell us this should be for 10,000 people. The thing is, we cannot do it for 10,000 people, because the entire the camaraderie, the relationships that our kids build, the entire impact that each one has on the other person, all of that would not remain the same if the class size increases. So a lot of times about value, why we have two kinds of platforms. One, we say high impact, high volume, and some we say low volume, high impact. The numbers are low and the impact is high. And those scaling those platforms, it is challenging. Second is, the KFC model, that you standardize everything everywhere and then run it, or the TEDx model, you open source something and you let it run. I think neither of the two would ever work for Dexterity, at least in the understanding of the Dexterity thought that I have, or my alumni, or the organization's alumni have. So I think those are real challenges, but knowing, where to draw that line, where to, and how to move forward, that is there. But I do understand from a business school standpoint, the question of scaling a social enterprise might have been, just basic challenges that a social enterprise might face. I think it is a challenge of scale and revenue. If you're solving many times, many solutions work very well in an isolated, targeted, contained set, geographic or set of people. And the moment you begin to scale, even if there is a microscopic frac, it becomes macroscopic. So and it is very easy to miss those microscopic fracs while everything else is working. Because the problem is with social enterprise comes, a lot of pats on the back, a lot of, so you're doing something very noble and everything. So people like to be nice in the process. Like at least the outer world. You do not get that kind of a feedback. If you were selling burgers outside University of Southampton, people would tell you that your burgers aren't good. But if you're trying to do some social, like something that is socially conscious or socially good, getting that hard feedback from customers sometimes is very, very challenging. And especially so when there is no program fee being charged. At Dexterity, that's something we pride ourselves on. We say that 15% would never pay if it was not good enough for all 100%. So that monitoring, that quality, that minding microscopic cracks as you scale, these are all very important things to be mindful of. And I think only an honest founder who is very critical of his or her own approach in the process would be able to do that, along with a team and advisors who are really looking at each one of those things that can go wrong once you scale.
Wonderful. Going back to something you said earlier in the discussion, you said something along the lines of being young needn't be measured in age, just in willingness to learn. And I think that what we've found in this presentation is there is a whole host of us who have been inspired and have learned from your experiences. And it's something really special to be able to be in your presence and to be able to hear your thoughts on the future of entrepreneurship. And I'm being very clear in highlighting entrepreneurship in that. I'm going to pass over to Professor Padmadas to wrap up. But from my own perspective, Sharadji, thank you for joining me. Thank you for being part of the dialogue. I really appreciated it.
Thank you very much for the way you conducted it. It allowed me to talk about things that matter. Thank you very much, Professor Sample.
Thank you, Sharadji. I think what an inspiring, I think we would like to, we don't want this conversation to end. None of us, I think people who are really joining us, because we all feel that the need for these conversations are more important now than ever before, because the world is changing so fast. The world is getting very complex and so on. And, as you've correctly said, education is not really as Swamiji also said, that it's not the amount of information that you just put it on your head, undigested. But, we need that kind of education where character building, that I think that is fundamental. And that value in education is very important. And I think in India, the changes are happening on a continuous basis. I think remarkably at remarkable pace in some places, but not uniformly. So, for example, I think we work very closely with the GRD College of Science in Coimbatore, where you've just met Professor Ramachandran, who has really enabled these kind of exposures. I think young people, when they are given the opportunity, when you enable the opportunity, they will flourish, by themselves. So, as responsible citizens of the world, I think we have to really enable those opportunities, and that's exactly what we were doing today. But what a fantastic, kind of conversation and the journey, and particularly we touched upon leadership. I think a leadership tomorrow's leader, or as well as the today's leaders, what they need is actually a leadership with compassion, leadership with care, and leadership with dignity, and leadership with integrity. I think these are really the fundamental values. And if we start teaching our younger generation, and then the kind of work that Dexterity Global is doing, reaching out to millions of young children, enabling them with opportunities, I think this is an effort that must continue. And I think from the University of Southampton, on behalf of the India Centre, I think we would be delighted and we would be pleased to work with you, to join you in that. I would say it's a modest mission, but with the huge impact, because it can transform lives. I don't know. Well, sometimes we see that. Well, that in a classroom there could be one or two people listening and grabbing and understanding the opportunity, and they may change the world for better. So we have, let's hope that we travel in our journey together. I think we continue to inspire and empower lots of young people, not just in India but across the world. I think that's exactly what we need. But it's a great honor, and without any further ado, may I just request our esteemed panel to switch on their video and also the microphone, because in what we do normally is that actually we have a big round of non-stop applause, but we live in a virtual world, but let's make that happen. Let's please join, colleagues, please join me to really give a big round of applause to our friend and colleague Sharad ji.